A very, very good afternoon from Geneva. Thank you for joining us for the webinar today. This is the third webinar in the Maersk and ITC SheTrades series, and the topic is Customs House Brokerage and Export Documentation. My name is Kriti Sharma, and I'm going to be your moderator for today. I'm very pleased to welcome our presenter, Mr. Bojan Strbanovic. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. My apologies, Bojan. He is the Global Head of Growth for the Maersk Customs House Brokerage, and he's also a licensed Customs House broker in the United States of America. The webinar today will talk about the Customs House brokerage, export documentation, and related rules and regulations that will ensure that your goods flow uninterrupted and reach your consumers smoothly. Before we begin, I'd like to highlight a few housekeeping rules. I request you to please keep your mics on mute so that we can continue without any disruptions. If you're unable to connect to audio, go to the top left corner of your screen, click on audio, and select audio connection. This will allow you to connect to audio. If you have any questions, please use the chat box on the bottom right corner of your screen. You can direct them to ITC Women and Trade or to everyone, and we usually address all questions towards the end. Now, thank you again for joining us today, and I sincerely hope that this webinar adds more value to your business and operations. I'd like to give the mic to our presenter now. Bojan, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Kriti. Can you hear me?
I can. If anyone's having any issues, can you please write in the chat box?
Yes, please let us know if I'm coming on clear or anything like that, because that's very important. But hopefully everybody can hear me. And again, thank you very much for ITC and SheTrades Group for having us here. I would also like to ask everyone to mute their connections. We have a lot of background noise.
Yes, everyone, please keep your mics on mute so that the presentation can run smoothly. Thank you.
Excellent. All right. So again, thank you very much for having us today. We're hoping to give you a good overview of what Customs House Brokerage is all about. This is not going to be a viewpoint from a Customs House broker in the United States, but I'll try to give you a general relevant view for wherever you're sitting around the world. So without further ado, let's just move on. And on the next slide, you can see my name and my face. Again, Bojan Strbanovic. I'm Global Head of Maersk Customs House Brokerage Growth Group, part of the global Maersk CHB Group. I've been in the industry for over 24 years. I'm a licensed Customs House broker in the United States of America, and most of my career, all of my career really, been around Customs House Brokerage, and I'm really looking forward to sharing a few moments with you and explaining all about Customs Brokerage. So there's going to be a few things that we're going to be covering today around Customs House Brokerage. So first and foremost, we'll go through some definitions and trying to decipher what is it that you really need when it's coming to hire a Customs House broker and partnering with a good partner. Then we'll go over what does a Customs broker do. What is it that they really do, and is this something that you might be able to actually do yourself? Then we'll actually provide you an overview of Customs Global Marketplace, just give you an idea of how big of a global market is this for the business overall. Then go very high level on what services you should expect that a broker should offer you so that you can have seamless execution of Customs brokerage services and thus have seamless movement of your merchandise through international borders. And then finally, what you should consider before choosing the right partner, what you should be looking for in an ideal partner overall. I would also ask you to be free to ask questions during the presentation, and again after I'm done with presenting a few slides and going over the material, we will have some time for direct Q&A. So let's start with some definitions. So what is Customs House Brokerage? Again, it's in general customs clearance, and what it means to clear goods. It means to clear goods through customs and borders territories, and it's applicable both for import and for export, shipping outside of trade zones where customers or where you are actually trading. Customs House Brokerage involves preparation of documentation, electronic submission of those declarations, detailing calculations of duty payments, and making sure that the exact right amount of taxes, duties, and different excise taxes are paid. And this is probably one of the most important part of the whole process, understanding that you're actually paying the right amount of duties, because depending on what geography you're talking about, customs actually can go back a few years. In instance of the United States, they can go back 5 years and actually do an audit of your entire activity for the past 5 years. And if you have overpaid, underpaid, or simply not paid the right amount of duties, there will be a correction. If it's really something that was done in a willful manner, there might be even a penalty. So these are pretty important things to keep in mind before you're actually moving goods internationally. And also, a customs house brokerage involves facilitation and communication between government authorities and you as an importer or an exporter. So, who are the customs house brokers and what do they do? Customs brokers act as intermediaries, so they're brokering, they're interacting in between the traders and customs in the clearing process in different geographies. Brokers overall can be private individuals, they can be partnerships, associations, or corporations. So it really depends on the geography, it depends on the customs authority and rules and regulations locally, but it can be any of these things. And one of the most important things that I have mentioned earlier is customs duty. So what is duty? The duty definition itself is that it's a tariff or a tax imposed on goods when transported across international borders. You usually are not getting any duties or taxes on the export side, but they're usually levied on the...
And stay afterwards. I'm sure that you're willing to stay and answer questions.
Is there a question? I'm sorry. Okay.
Hi. If I may jump in, if you have any questions, please can you write them in the chat box? So there is a feedback to speak a little loudly. I think some women are having issues with the connection.
Okay, no problem. Is this better?
Much better.
I hope it is.
Thank you.
Okay, no problem. So again, if you have any questions, please ask them through a chat box, and then Kriti will help me with reading those questions. And you can do that during the presentation or after the presentation. It doesn't really matter. We want to make sure that we answer to all of your questions. And if we don't get to every single question during the presentation, then we would definitely follow up afterwards. So going back to the definition of customs duty, again, it's a tariff or a tax imposed on goods when they cross international borders. It is, again, something that is levied on the import side, because usually the country where goods are being imported in is trying to protect country's economy, the manufacturing jobs, residents, the environment, and overall trying to control the flow of goods, especially in restricted and prohibited goods in and out of the country, but especially in the country. Okay. Next slide is just a definition about what is HTS or classification, because in order to assess the right duty amounts, you actually have to know how to classify your merchandise. And classification itself, or HTS, Harmonized Tariff Schedule Number, is a number that provides applicable tariff rates and statistical category for all merchandise. So if you're, this specific definition is for the United States, but Harmonized Tariff Schedule System is actually global. It's in over 160 countries around the world. And first 6 digits of those 10 digits number is actually standardized and universal all around the world. The last 4 are used in the country for statistical purposes and for special categorization of the merchandise. And it can, in some instances, obviously affect the actual duty rate. But classification, or an HTS, is the very, very important part of the whole clearance process. The HTS tariff book, that is now obviously electronic and digital, in the old days used to be a huge book that would literally be, you would be able to classify anything from a needle to a locomotive. Anything and everything that's being imported or exported can be actually found in this book. There are some general rules of interpretation that are guiding you through how to classify your goods. But at the end of the day, the process of classifying your goods and declaring your goods properly, and that classification is driving the duty rate, is definitely the most important process of this entire clearance process and entire customs house brokerage activity. I have also provided you a couple of links for the tariff database. This is an interactive database and tool that you can use to actually try to classify yourself. Some merchandise is very easy to classify and very easy to get correct rate of duty, but some merchandise might get very complex. For instance, a watch can have up to 4 or 5 different classifications, depending on how the watch is made, and that is, vastly impacting amount of duties and taxes that you would be paying on the inbound side. So classifying is something that you can try to do yourself through the links that we have provided, but it is something that is very involved, and it is something where a customs house broker is much better equipped to go in and do that. Okay, the next slide is showing you a little bit of what customs house brokerage is around the world. So these statistics are coming from World Customs Organization and their annual report 2017-2018, which is the latest annual report. It is showing you a breakdown of inbound and outbound declarations around the world. And at a glance, you don't have to do this math. We did it for you ahead of time. There is over 600 million transactions every year that take place in different geographies, in and out of commerces of different countries. So overall, there is a lot of activity, and you should just have a general feeling of when you're taking point in trade, when you're acting as a trader, that there is a lot other participants overall around the world. World Customs annual report also provides interesting statistical data from one country to the other. So this would also be another point of information or source of intelligence for you after the webinar itself. So moving forward, I can give you a little bit of background on what are the overall trends in our industry. So let's call it 20 plus years ago, customs authorities around the world have been seen as revenue generators. As an example, in the United States, Customs and Border Protection is the second leading revenue generator after IRS or taxing authority for that specific geography. And I'm sure that holds true for most geographies around the world. So again, more than 20 years ago, it was emphasis on revenue generation. Releases were slow. It was a lot of manual processes, and there was just in general more activity focused on generating revenue and less focusing on facilitating trade. Today, let's call it in the last 10 years or so, the shift did happen after 9/11, and the shift did definitely happen towards security and overall security of different customs authorities. So experienced customs officers were sent to the field to be inspecting merchandise. There was more focus on compliance and regulatory requirements, on FCPA regulations and UK Anti-Bribery Act, And as a result of that, a lot of certification came about. CTPAT in the United States, AEO around the world, PIP in Canada, and many others. And then moving forward, if you look at tomorrow and what's kind of coming our way ahead of us, is there is a shift of customs becoming a revenue generator. That kind of turn point happened with the big economic recession that took place in 2007, 2008, and customs is slowly adopting to focusing on revenue generation again. And I guess one of the biggest trends is digitization and prevalence of technology when it comes to our industry. World Customs Organization is definitely driving one window initiatives around the world, and one window meaning that when you file the declaration to customs authorities, hi, is there a question? Sorry, I'm not sure if there was a question or not, but if you do have a question, please send it in the chat box. So anyhow, a little bit more focus on digitization and technology. So traditional EDI connectivities were replaced by API feeds. There is a prevalence of new digital technologies like blockchain, and overall looking into pushing data information through one window, which means that when you file your declaration to customs, you're also using the same platform to communicate with other government agencies around the world in different geographies, like agriculture, like food and drug, controlled government instances, and others. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. This will give you just an overall viewpoint on what should you expect from a customs broker. So for somebody to actually call themselves a customs broker, they should be capable of providing these three core services, and that is import declarations for allowing or giving a release for inbound cargo to enter the commerce of a given geography, export declarations for giving the permission to load an outbound vessel for exporters shipping outside of their trade zone, and then in-transit declarations when customs is allowing merchandise to move from the first port of lading to the final destination. So let's say an example would be that ship docks in the port of Hamburg, and then the actual destination for that merchandise is, let's say, Port of Warsaw in Poland. So rather than clearing that container in Hamburg, there is a in-transit declaration or T1 process in place, allowing that container, that merchandise to actually move all the way to Warsaw, where it will be cleared under Polish rules and regulations rather than Germany was. Okay. Moving on to the next slide. Apart from the core services that a broker should have, a good solid broker that you should be connecting with should have also extended portfolio services. So they should help you with classification, as we also mentioned. They should also connect with you very early in the process and maybe help you with engineering services, meaning they can look at your merchandise and work with you to maybe find best ways to put the most effective and most appropriate classification, but also making sure that you're minimizing the duty and tax exposure in the destination country. They can work with you on selecting where you're going to be sourcing your merchandise from and taking advantages of trade agreement qualifications. They can help you with drawback or reconciliation. So a specific drawback would actually be something that in Europe is usually called inward and outward processing relief. But what that is that you're importing merchandise in a given country. For whatever reason, that merchandise didn't sell. and you're either exporting it back or exporting it to another market. Well, since it really never entered the commerce of that given territory and you already paid duties, if you prove the documentation on import and export side, you can actually claim 99% of the duties that you have paid already, and therefore, in a way, get your money back. There's different ways of doing that, and you can also work on some duty payment mitigations where you don't even have to pay the duty if you know already that you will be storing the merchandise and eventually exporting it out. This duty drawback is available also for merchandise that you maybe destroyed, for merchandise that goes for donation, and a couple of other ways. So again, a good partner should be able to tell you different ways of how you can mitigate or avoid deferred payment of duty altogether. Also, a good partner should be able to provide you with some managed services like on-site staffing, 4PL, broker management, certification of security organizations like CTPAT and AEO certifications, helping you with foreign trade zone and bonded warehousing. And finally, they can help you out with overall education, training that can be done either on webinars like this one or on-site training, provide trade newsletters and WebEx trainings, and to bring your overall awareness where it needs to be before you're actually trading in a given geography. So what should you know overall before choosing the right partner? Really, the key responsibility of a customs broker is to ensure compliant transaction of your declarations with local authorities, to have deep knowledge of local regulations, because again, this is really not your core business. So you're employing somebody who is the expert, and somebody who actually does this for a living, if you will. So you're expecting deep knowledge and understanding of local regulations, depending on where you're transacting your business. Also, you should be expecting optimization of services locally to meet your specific needs. Every client is different, and you might have some special needs, and your broker should be flexible enough to work with you on that. And then finally, they should be acting as your trusted advisor when you need to explore new markets. So, you might have heard of the recent trade wars going on all around the world, and when you're concerned about what's going on and some duty rates might be. I'm sorry, is there a question?
Everyone, can I please request you to keep your mics on mute? I'm trying to find people. Shinier, can you please keep your mics on mute? Yeah.
Okay. Good. Thank you. Thank you, Kriti. So we're just going over what the trusted advisor is. So as you know, there's current trade environment around the world is pretty intense and contentious. There's different trade wars going on within different geographies, and you are probably concerned about all of these different rate hikes that are going on around the world and how that can possibly impact your importing and exporting in different geographies. So, if you're picking up a phone and calling somebody, the first number that you're calling is your trusted advisor. So you develop that relationship with your customs broker over time. So they pretty much become somebody that can advise you on ongoing items and ongoing updates in our industry overall. And then on your side, you really need to have very good understanding of your product, because ultimately in most geographies, importer of record, which is who you represent, is usually fully responsible for declaration of merchandise. So you need to really understand what is the product, what is it consisting of, what are the materials they used in the product, where was it manufactured, from, so that your broker who is classifying that merchandise for the import can actually know exactly how it should be declared. You should be keeping up with local government laws and regulations. This is again something where the broker can help you, but that doesn't alleviate the need for you to be informed. And then finally, keep on working on fostering collaboration with your partners. There's a number of partners that you're using in your overall logistics setup in your supply chain. And in order for your merchandise to be floating the right way, you really need to have a smooth collaboration between different partners. So a little bit about more information that you can get. I'm giving you some US-based links, but these links were selected very carefully, and they're very general in nature. So you have definitions that pretty much stand correct for anywhere around the world. There's a guide for HTS or classification database that is searchable, and this is where you can actually go in and try to put in description of your merchandise and have a good understanding of what would duty rate be for any given territory before importing. And then finally, Maersk can help you out with your customs house brokerage needs. We can offer new services and capabilities, strong data management and visibility. We can handle your business anywhere in the world. We have a vast network of offices, and regardless of how big or small you are, we can adapt and work with you. But really, at the end of the day, we will manage your risks and unpredictabilities in the market, lack of control that you have once you start shipping, and then we can work with you to optimize your supply chain and finally become your partner. There's a couple of links there as well that you can use to learn a little bit more, and there's some additional information about our industry overall as well. Okay, Kriti, that would be the end of our presentation. If you want to go in and choose a couple of questions.
Excellent. Thank you very much for the very informative webinar. I see a lot of questions coming up. I'll start with the first one. So this is from Zaim Sumru. The question is, what is the difference between clearing agent and custom house broker? Is it the same or different?
Yeah, it is the same. It could be called different, right? So you can, customs brokers can be called brokers, just brokers, but that can be misleading because there's financial brokers, there's real estate brokers. So we like to make a distinction to minimum call it customs brokers, and at Maersk we actually call it customs house brokers. Clearing agent is the same thing. In some countries, those clearing agents need licensing. So in the case of United States, in the case of Italy, in the case of Mexico, in the case of a number of other countries, you actually do need a license. You need to be certified by a local government to do that business. And in some other countries like UK, you don't really need it. And Germany is another one, and I can go on and on. You don't really need to be a licensed broker. A freight forwarder can do the clearance. So maybe clearance agent is referring more to geographies where licensing is not necessary, but customs broker or customs house broker is really a naming convention in geographies where license is required.
Wonderful. I hope that answers the question. We have another one. Would the modifications in the future trends of staffing with the utilization of automated technologies such as digitization? I think there's something wrong with the way it is phrased, but I don't know. I don't understand the question. Bojan, do you?
Well, let me see if I can see where the question is.
I can. This is from Ashwini Satnur. Ashwini, could you repeat that again? I'm trying to paste it at the bottom. Would there be modifications in the staffing? This is the question.
The question is modification of stuffing of containers?
Ashwini, could you clarify that? With the on-site staffing.
So let me try to understand this, because I'm not sure how the stuffing itself relates to what a customs broker does. But if you're referring to having multiple vendors in one container, and how you're actually consolidating your goods in origin, maybe that is the intended question. Yeah, it can actually make a big difference. So if you're consolidating your goods with multiple vendors, you can either have clearance done by each vendor in destination, or you can have consolidated clearance over multiple vendors with one equal to record. It really all depends on how you're managing your POs and how you're managing your SKUs and your vendors, and that would drive how you declare your goods at destination. Hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you. I have another one. Thank you for the presentation. Could you please elaborate more about CTPAT and its benefits? This is from Senia.
Hi, Xenia. So CTPAT is Customs and Trade Partnership Against Terrorism. So this is one of a couple of trade organizations, if you will, certifications that are needed, that came about after 9/11 terrorist act in the United States, and the need to really virtually expand borders of a given geography. So specifically, this was something that was built in the United States. There was a new government agency that was built. It's called Department of Homeland Security, as you can say from the naming convention of the agency itself. It was all about securing the homeland, and then customs in the new organizational structure actually is part of the Department of Homeland altogether. Right now in the United States, the acting commissioner of Department of Homeland is the previous customs commissioner. So they're very, very intertwined. And CTPAT in turn is something that you need to have certification for. There is a way that you can answer a questionnaire, make sure that your facilities are properly set up so they are secure, that vendors that you're doing business with are also adhering to CTPAT rules and regulations. And after you do all of that, you can apply for Tier 1 CTPAT certification. Customs comes in, does a verification, and then you can be elevated to level 2 and level 3. All of that should give you some benefits of clearing your cargo fast, much faster than if you're not a member of CTPAT. And today we are seeing most benefit if you're actually moving specifically, because this again, CTPAT is US specific. If you're moving your merchandise via truck over the borders, either from Mexico into US or from Canada into US. So Canada has another organization with certification needed that's exactly the same as CTPAT, which is called PIP. And then around the world, there's about 30 plus countries and more that are part of AEO certification. So all of those certifications are kind of revolving around the same thing, and that's security.
Thank you. I hope, Senia, that answers your question. One from Philip. Will there be a challenge of over-dependability on a single operator for all these services?
So it depends on where you're transacting your business and how complex your business is, right? So obviously you can always choose to have redundancy. So it really revolves around complexity of your merchandise and where you're doing business. It is a good idea to have redundancy and to select more than one provider. But actually, global trend with big Fortune 5 companies is quite reverse. Big companies that are international global conglomerates actually have hundreds of customs brokers around the world, and they have some very small outfits in India. So there's one Fortune 500 company that has actually over 50 brokers in India alone. So pretty much, I guess, every port they have a different broker, and probably in some ports they might have multiple brokers depending on the trade lane. And that's really not sustainable. So while it makes sense because probably those brokers have local partnerships and develop good relationships with local authorities, um, at the end of the day, it is very hard to have a good span of control over activities. And at the end of the day, you as an importer director should be concerned mostly about your risks and liabilities and concerned about your ability to control compliance management and what is actually declared on your behalf. So if you think that some company can have 2, 3, 500 customs brokers around the world, to manage that activity is a daunting task. Now, if you're a small entrepreneur from the emerging market and you have a couple of containers a month or a couple of containers a year, you're probably better off partnering with one partner and making sure that you really know their business, that they know your business, and that you trust each other.
Thank you. I can see 3 more questions. Bojan, is it okay if we take them all?
Sure.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay, so they're all long questions. So from Yemisi, thank you. To find a broker or freight forwarder with all or most of the essential qualities, it's usually quite expensive for MSMEs, and therefore makes us less competitive in some cases, even unaffordable. This discourages small business owners. What are your recommended options, for example, in terms of rates and services that small firms can use?
Negotiate better, I guess, right? So no, but this is a very good question. So you should actually explore your market space. You should understand what is the competitive rate for services rendered, and to be quite honest with you, the probably the best way to go about this is to try to look for somebody who provides integrated services. If you buy separate services from separate service providers, you're bound to actually probably pay into their margins. If you're buying an integrated service, there will be few ways that you can actually benefit. One, arguably, that integrated service should be more competitive in the marketplace. Two, internally, you will be spending less time managing various partners because let's be frank. If you have 5 or 6 different service providers to take care of, that is 5 or 6 different AP, accounts payable process that you have to worry about. You have to review and audit several different invoices. You have to work with 5 or 6 different points of contact. Some service providers might not have one point of contact, but multiple. So I would suggest that you actually connect with somebody who can provide you with integrated services, be one point of contact across most of the services that you need. But obviously, do your research and be mindful of what the competitive market rate is in your market.
Wonderful. I have 2 more questions. This one is very long and a little technical. This is from Rafaela, who's an exporter to the US, and she is based in Zambia. She is saying that as an African producer, she should be entering free of duty for most products, but how can she be sure which of her products qualify under what HTS codes?
I'm reading the questions, and
Yeah,
they're
it's
going
a
into
long
detail
question.
about chapter notes and everything. So again, you can try to use the database that I have provided. It is actually pretty easy to use. It is working almost like Google search. You click on the link, it's searchable. You put description of the merchandise, and you should be able to have a good idea of what your duty rate should be. You can also use the cross system, and that is a system where Customs has issued some binding rulings, meaning there was let's say, difference of opinion on what merchandise should be classified at, and importer thought that it should be classified one way, customs thought that it should be classified the other. Usually customs is claiming that it should be classified with a higher duty rate, obviously, and importer is saying no, it should be less duty or free of duty. And then there is a ruling that was made on that specific merchandise that is now binding in between customs and that importer, but is also used as a precedent as well moving forward. So I would encourage you to start exploring yourself and look at the database. But at the end of the day, if you have complex merchandise, you are much better off connecting with somebody who can provide you with classification services. And if you think that you're paying unnecessarily or that you're paying too much, think about the overall cost of not declaring your merchandise the right way, or trying to find classification that is duty free to seemingly quote unquote save money. And if customs actually realizes that classification is not correct, as I said, they can go back 5 years. They can go in and make the determination what correct classification should be, and then they can penalize you for declaring the goods the wrong way, and they can be asking you for a difference in duties that you owe for the past 5 years. And that is a pretty expensive proposition. So I would say be very careful and choose a partner that can help you out with classification.
Excellent. And just a final question. Does Maersk have any special services for SMEs at the moment? This is from Faiza.
We do. We actually, I don't want to promote and market Maersk too much during these calls, because this is really intended for you to get general information about our industry and ask questions. But since you're asking me, we do have online ability for you to actually book your container online, and also go in and have customs clearance done at the same time. So this is something that is new, something that we are offering first as a carrier. It is really geared to a smaller transactional clients, and especially small enterprises and entrepreneurs that usually are using the online portal to book the container. And while you're booking the container, you can also select your customs brokerage to be done by us as well. And you'll have, as I said, less partners to worry about, less invoices to audit, and be rest assured that your merchandise will be handled compliant.
Excellent. Okay, we have another one from Natalie. This is the final question.
Sure.
Okay, I think she could not hear the answer. She's saying that she could not hear what you said about SMEs because there was a noise disruption.
Right. So,
sorry. Yes.
So, yeah, no problem. So what you can do, yes, you can now go in and book container online. We're currently present in 7 countries, mostly in Europe. And in July, we would be adding another 14 countries around the world. And there will be altogether 21 countries where you can book your container online. And you can also choose for your customs brokerage to be done at the same time. So that is definitely geared towards more transactional clients, small entrepreneurial enterprises that are looking for ease of use, and they're looking for, if you will, one-stop shop. So when you're booking your container, you can book your customs brokerage as well.
Wonderful. Natalie, I hope this was clear. We do not have any more questions. So I believe, yes, Natalie is very happy. Thank you, Bojan, for repeating that. Okay, thank you everyone for joining us today, especially to our presenter. I'm sure I speak for everyone when I say that the webinar was very informative, and we all appreciate the personal answers to each question. Thank you. Everyone else, please don't forget we have the next webinar in the series on 11th July. We'll be sharing more details about the topic and login shortly. Thank you. Have a good day, everyone. Hope to speak to you very soon. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye now.
Bye.